Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of the Roundabout Way of Fate. This will be Part 3, Chapter 2, entitled The Fear. The next day at school, Izuku does something he's wanted to do for ages. He shows off his quirk. Tsubasa and Inaba are more than willing to help. Tsubasa somehow got a scrape on his knee after Kachan and Izuku left yesterday, so he bounces up to Izuku as soon as he arrives at school and shows him. If Izuku didn't know any better, he'd say the winged boy almost seemed proud of his scrape. So once they'd gathered the attention of all their classmates and a couple of their teachers, Izuku reaches out to heal his scrape. He's nervous at first, almost worried that the previous day had been a dream and he didn't really have a quirk. But like before, his quirk seems to activate the second he touches the injury. His peers watch with awe-filled eyes as it fades away into unblemished skin within seconds. "Wow!" one girl exclaims. "That's so cool, Midoriya-kun." "Definitely worth the wait," another laughs. "Oh geez, what a godsend that quirk is," one of the teachers whines good-naturedly. "These kids are always roughhousing and getting hurt." Izuku beams at the praise. Next to him, Kachan puffs up his chest with pride. "And guess what?" he declares. "When I'm a hero, Zuku's going to be my healer." More oohing and eyeing from the crowd of children. One of the teachers looks amused. "A hero healer, huh?" she says. "Well, you've certainly got the quirk for it. How did you say it works again?" Izuku explains his theory of energy transfer, and she hums contemplatively. "I've never heard of a quirk like this before, and I bet it'll only get stronger as you get older." She winks and pats his curls. "It's always good to see young people with healing quirks. Lord knows there's not enough of them." "Dr. Tsubasa-san said it's 'cause healing quirks aren't hereditary?" his teacher asks, and he nods. Another teacher raises his eyebrows. "Really? I didn't know that." Izuku opens his mouth to say more, but Kachan drags him back to the group of kids before he can. They swarm around him, asking him questions about his quirk and how it feels and why it was so late. Izuku answers as best as he can, but soon Kachan starts to fidget impatiently beside him. After a few more minutes, he clearly gets bored that the attention isn't on him and shoos the other kids away. Izuku doesn't mind too much, though. All this attention is new and overwhelming. He's used to just fading into the background and staying by Kachan's side. Thankfully, the rest of the school day goes by fairly normally, aside from a couple of kids coming up to him during lunch asking him to heal their scrapes and bruises. Then he briefly gains another small audience while he uses his quirk. He doesn't really know how to respond to praise other than awkwardly smiling and scratching the back of his head, so he doesn't linger very long, and the group usually disperses soon after. Kachan can't seem to decide whether he wants to boast about having Izuku as his healer or be grumpy that the attention isn't on him anymore. Inaba tries to reassure him. "Don't worry, it's just 'cause it's a new quirk. I'm sure the hype will die down after a couple of days." Kachan merely grumbles inaudibly, but Izuku lets out a sigh of relief. "I hope so," he says exasperatedly. "I don't know if I like all this attention. I feel so awkward." Kachan snorts, but seems appeased by his response. At the end of the day, the four of them walk home together. Tsubasa and Inaba splitting off a couple of streets before theirs. Kachan does insist on walking Izuku to his door, which is a bit strange and unnecessary, but Izuku doesn't protest much. When his mother comes back home soon after, she seems extremely relieved when she sees him, but her expression smooths out a moment later, and she announces she's making katsudon for dinner. The prospect of his favorite dish immediately takes Izuku's mind off of any oddities he may have perceived, and he later chatters happily to his mother about his first day at school with a quirk as they eat dinner. Before going to bed, he decides to take out a new notebook and start researching everything he can about hero healers. Just like with his hero notebooks, he begins filling pages with information about individual healers, although he quickly discovers there's a lot more information about Recovery Girl available than there is for any other healer. His eyes roam over article after article about the healer traveling to other countries to heal people, to heal heroes, to save people that others couldn't save in ways that no one else could. By the time Enko peeks into his room, Izuku is fast asleep in front of his computer with Recovery Girl's biography displayed on the monitor screen. She ends up carrying him to bed, and from that night on, Izuku's admiration for Recovery Girl only continues to grow. The second day of school goes just about the same as the first, but the third day is a bit more interesting. It seems that word is spread all over the school about Izuku's quirk. He finds himself being approached not only by his classmates, but by upperclassmen too, asking him to heal paper cuts and bruises and even a twisted ankle. Izuku happily obliges, but as the weeks go by, more and more students approach him with their injuries. He never realized how many scrapes and bruises children got until he was faced with them. They're usually the same students, too, ones that like to roughhouse or play sports. Kachan's mood steadily sours as the number of kids to approach Izuku rises. He tries to tell the students to suck it up, especially those with smaller injuries, but Izuku can't find it within himself to turn someone away when they're asking for help. This results in him sometimes going home extremely tired from using his quirk so much. Kachan always yells at him when this happens, but Izuku takes it as a learning opportunity. His quirk is called Healing Energy. That's what they decided when Anko had taken him to get it registered. The next day, he asks his mother for a new notebook and begins filling it with notes about his own quirk rather than those of heroes. At school, there are plenty of opportunities for him to practice with his quirk, so he learns a few new things as time passes. The first thing he discovers is that his quirk doesn't work at all if he's injured or sick. A week after his quirk manifests, he accidentally trips down the stairs and twists his ankle. He doesn't think too much of it until he discovers that he can't use his quirk when someone asks him to at lunch. He panics, wondering what happened, and it only clicks in his mind the day after when his ankle is feeling better that it probably had something to do with that. To test this, he had Tsubasa punch him in the arm, much to Kachan's displeasure, and tries to heal a scrape to no avail. So there's that. The second thing he discovers is that skin-to-skin contact is needed to heal. This he does not discover by accident, but because he's genuinely curious. He supposes it should have been a bit obvious. The third thing he learns about his quirk is that it works best when he's well-fed and well-rested. This kind of relates to the whole it won't work if he's injured or sick, except it's just something he notices over time. Like if he doesn't sleep so well the previous night or skips breakfast before school, then his quirk is more sluggish and he tires out a lot faster. The fourth thing he discovers is that he cannot do anything to help illnesses. He tries futilely to pour his energy into Tsubasa when the winged boy gets a cold during the winter to no avail. Kachan eventually drags him away to prevent him from getting sick. The fifth thing he learns is that when he heals someone, he brings them to their absolute best. He discovers this with Kachan one day during winter break. They're off in the forest again, just the two of them this time, and Kachan is trying to push the outer limits of his quirk and make bigger explosions. Whenever he overuses his quirk, Izuku heals him, and he seems to be extra energized afterwards, making even bigger explosions than before. Izuku wonders if he has an effect on other people's quirks, but he figures that if he brings them to their full health, then it's only natural that their quirks would be working at their best. He can also sort of sense injuries, too, which he knew about with the bird's dislocated wing, but it's especially helpful during the first few weeks after his quirk manifests. Kachan isn't too good at asking for help, even when he knows Izuku can provide it, so sometimes he'll lean against his friend's side and feel with his quirk if he has any injuries. And with a rowdy boy like Kachan, there's almost always some sort of injury. But Kachan doesn't like to bring it up, so Izuku will just grab his hand as they walk home and let his energy flow. Kachan never comments on the sudden energy he feels and instead ruffles Izuku's curls into a rat's nest, much to the greenette's displeasure. Just when he thinks he's learned all he can about his quirk, he discovers something new. It's exciting, and he quickly comes to love his new power, scribbling down everything he learns into his quirk notebook. He doesn't even mind too much when he goes home tired from healing because it's evidence of his hard work. Inko, however, does mind. "Please, Izuku, you need to learn how to say no," she says one night during dinner. "I know you want to help everyone, but it's not good for you to be draining yourself so often. You need energy, too." Izuku shoves some rice into his mouth. He always seems to be hungry after a long day of healing, and protests. "But it's good quirk practice. Besides, Kachan always uses his quirk, like every day." "Izuku," Inko says with a firm tone. So Izuku sighs in defeat. Okay. The next day after school, Izuku's waiting just outside the main building, watching kids as they walk home or get picked up by their parents. Kachan got detention for getting in a fight with another student, which isn't uncommon, even though Izuku has made his disapproval very clear, so he has to wait for him to be done. Kachan had insisted that he wait for him, even though Tsubasa and Inaba offered to walk him home, but whatever. He should be done soon. Oi, Midoriya-kun! The boy glances up to see a couple of fourth graders approaching him. He recognizes them. Akamine and Furuya. They treat Izuku well enough, but from what he's heard, they're a couple of troublemakers. They always come to him with their scrapes and bruises from whatever tussle they got into. Normally he'd heal them without any complaint, but after what his mother told him. Hey, I've got a couple of scrapes. You mind healing them? Akamine says, as soon as they reach him. Sorry, not today, guys, Izuku says apologetically. Akamine looks briefly surprised. Aw, come on, they sting a lot and they're really nasty, he whines. Look! He pulls up his sleeve to reveal scrapes and bruises that do look a bit uncomfortable, but are not really that bad. They'd heal in a week on their own. Yeah, and I got punched in the face, Furuya states bluntly, turning his head to show Izuku the bruise blooming on his cheek. The boy sighs, not even bothering to ask how he got it. I'm sorry, guys, but I've been kind of using my quirk a lot for the past few days. I'm trying to take a break, he explains patiently. Yeah, but this won't take that much energy, Akamine insists. Come on, man, do us a favor. Izuku shrinks under the pressure, but a ball of irritation forms in his chest. It's his quirk. He shouldn't be pressured to use it if he doesn't want to. Actually, I do you guys a lot of favors, he says, slowly backing away from them. Pretty much every week, really, so I think this one time you can... Furuya suddenly reaches out and grabs his upper arm, pulling him back over to them. He grins down at him, but it doesn't look friendly at all. Izuku suddenly notices how tall these older boys are, how much bigger they are than him. Even amongst boys his own age, Izuku's pretty short, so these guys practically loom over him. He gulps. Ah, come on, Midoriya-kun, Furuya sneers. Don't be like that. He grabs Izuku's hand and puts it on his bruised cheek. To Izuku's dismay, he feels his energy begin to leave him through his fingertips and he struggles to pull away. Another thing he's noticed about his quirk is that it automatically activates when he touches an injury. He hardly ever has to think about turning it on, but it's only now that he realizes he has no idea how to turn it off. He panics when Furuya releases to let go of his hand, and Akamine starts reaching for his other arm. Hey, stop it, he snaps. I said no! I said no! You want to be a healer, don't you? Akamine jeers, grabbing his forearm and pulling him closer. What kind of healer refuses to heal? He starts to bring Izuku's hand towards his bruised arm, but no matter how hard Izuku pulls, he can't break out of his grip. Stop it! He cries out, his eyes welling with tears. Let me go! Leave me alone! He yelps as Furuya squeezes his arm hard, and he thrashes futilely, panic making his heartbeat rapid. The two boys are so much stronger than him. He's never felt so helpless before. He hates it. He feels like he's going to be sick. He doesn't understand why they're doing this because he said no. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Izuku nearly cries with relief at the sound of Kachan's voice. Akamine and Furuya both pause as they look up at the blonde boy rushing out of the building towards them. Izuku's never seen his friend look so angry, but the two upperclassmen don't seem intimidated. You fuckers! Kachan shrieks. Get your hands off him! Izuku tries to pull away again, but Furuya doesn't let up. Or what? He laughs. Akamine snickers. Yeah, what are you going to do about it, first grader? In response, Kachan lets out a battle cry and crashes into them with explosions dancing on his palms. As soon as their grip on him is broken, Izuku turns around and flees. His heartbeat is pounding in his ears, but he can still hear the cacophony of explosions and yells behind him. For a second, he feels a flash of worry for his friend, but he knows that he would only get in the way if he went to go help him. So he takes cover behind the nearest tree and waits for it to be over. For all their talk, Akamine and Furuya don't last long in this fight. Oi, get off me! You're freaking crazy! Akamine shrieks. There's the sound of scuffling feet, and Izuku hesitantly peeks out from behind the tree. Kachan stands with his back to him, facing down Akamine and Furuya, who are covered in multiple burns and bruises. They stare at the blonde with wide eyes that are both somehow angry and terrified at the same time. We're gonna tell Yosan, Furuya snaps. You'll pay for this tomorrow. Kachan merely raises his fist threateningly in response. The upperclassmen both tense up before gritting their teeth and fleeing. You're going to regret this, Furuya shrieks before he disappears. There's a moment of silence. Then Kachan wipes his nose on his arm and turns around, clearly looking for Izuku. Tears blur his vision as Izuku jumps out of his hiding spot and runs over to him. Kachan, he cries out. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oof. He collides with Kachan and wraps him into a tight hug. He's too busy sobbing into his friend's shoulder to realize that his quirk isn't naturally responding to the cuts and bruises that litter his skin. I was so scared, he hiccups. They kept pulling on me and forcing me to use my quirk, even though I told them no. Hey, what are you even saying? Kachan growls without heat, pushing him off. I can barely hear you when you're... He pauses, staring down at Izuku's forearms. Izuku looks down too, and sees that his sleeves have pushed up slightly, revealing angry red bruises forming where Furuya and Akamine had grabbed him. Oh, Izuku sniffles, trying to wipe away his tears. Kachan is eerily still for a few moments, then almost quite literally explodes. I'll kill them, he screeches, whirling around as if to look for the two older boys. Kachan, Izuku yelps, pulling him back. It's fine, it doesn't hurt that bad, although I don't think I can really heal you. He takes Kachan's hand in his and tries to pour his energy, but nothing happens. Kachan's eye twitches. Izuku lets his head hang. I'm sorry. What are you fucking apologizing for? Kachan snaps. I'm the one who's supposed to... He cuts himself off, his teeth grinding audibly as he glares at the ground. They're both quiet for a few moments, Kachan silently seething, while Izuku tries to get his tears under control. He sees the other boy glancing at his bruises and is surprised to find not only anger in his eyes, but... guilt? Izuku blinks. You were really cool back there, Kachan, he says softly. I can't believe you took on 2 4th graders and won. Kachan straightens up and lifts his chin. The best hero always wins, no matter what. They always come out on top. Despite his words, his voice lacks the enthusiasm it usually has when he says something like that. Izuku sniffles once before smiling. You're already my hero. Kachan's eyes widen slightly, and Izuku lets out a wet chuckle. You are. You saved me, didn't you? Kachan stares at him for a few moments before his lip twitches up into a half grin. Yeah, I did. I saved you. Izuku smiles back at him, and the boy full-on grins, puffing his chest up. Well, come on then, Zuku. Let's get going. All right, listeners, this concludes the first half to Chapter 2 of The Roundabout Way of Fate. The second half to this chapter will be up next. I'm eager to hear what your all's thoughts and reactions are to this one so far, with Izuku finally starting to utilize his quirk with more people than just Kachan and family and his immediate friends. Me personally, I'm a huge fan of the way the author writes Izuku's quirk in this fic. I think there's a lot of really cool components to it, and I like that this chapter really starts to touch base on some of the different facets of it, right? The fact that if Izuku touches an injury, it starts to immediately drain him, so he doesn't have that much control over it. And also the fact that he can't be injured or tired and exhausted or sick, those types of things. So he has to really take care of himself in order to be able to help and heal others. So I think there's some really cool components there, and I'm eager to hear what you all thought as well. And as always, thank you all so much for listening.